Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Ag Forecast, brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions, your premier platform for real-time global insights. Well, let's rewind the clocks back to a year ago. I'm showing you on the left the statewide average temperature ranks for April 2018, and on the right we have the statewide precipitation ranks. And what do we see here? In addition to this being quite a drier month for the middle part of the country, where things were wet on the west and east coasts, it was an incredibly cold. In fact, one of the coldest Aprils on record. Now, why I'm kind of making you relive an awful April from a year ago is because I'm about to tell you things are going to be much different. In fact, you can take these two maps and maybe just make them look almost nearly the exact opposite as we progress into April 2019. We got to talk about that. What made April 2018 look the way it did? There's a valuable lesson to learn here, okay? There were a few major features. We had this dominant ridge that was sitting just to the north and west of Alaska. And what that allowed our jet stream to do is become quite wavy, and we end up getting these high over low patterns, and all those waves like that will allow the colder air that typically sits over the Hudson Bay to serve as an anchor by which we could just keep swinging this colder air first through Montana, then all the way through the central states, clear off to parts of the East Coast. Keep that picture in mind. Our anchors were this deep trough sitting here over the Hudson Bay, just north of the Great Lakes, and also this ridge that was north of Alaska. What we didn't have was a really nice, smooth, fast jet stream across the Pacific. That was the lesson we were supposed to learn from 2018. Now, since we're talking about temperatures, let me show you the current temperatures here as of early in the morning, about 3:45 a.m. Now, we certainly have some cold air in place because we have our anchor. Our deep trough is sitting here, and we see we're able to bring down some pretty cold temperatures. We're talking temperatures that are going to be flirting with the freezing line, freezing number right down there in the northern parts of like Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, parts of South Carolina, certainly back over to Arkansas as we progress with the morning. We should bottom out with temperatures around 6 a.m. Just before the sun rises. Because of that, National Weather Service all hazards map has a freeze warning out for a pretty large area here. And we talked about this a lot last week about the probability just on Monday morning of getting that freezing line down here to clip the northern parts of those three states. So thinking about this as we get going here, I also want to take you back to a year ago with soil moisture. I'm going to show you a new map. I'm vetting this one. I'm looking a lot at it over the last couple of years here, seeing how well it does. But this is from a satellite observation. The satellite's name is Grace, and what we're doing here is we're basically looking at anomalies in gravity to try to understand surface soil moisture all over the planet. And one thing was the same about a year ago, and that was this. We were very wet here in parts of the Mid-South, parts of Kentucky and Tennessee. Outside of that, things were not much wetter than average. Well, this is what it looks like right now, and our major problem for spring 2019 is certainly the flooding issues that we're having, and we're going to continue to have for quite some time. But those temperatures are changing, and we got to talk about all of that in this video. We added to our wetness problem here over the last 3 days. This is the weekends. This is basically the last 3 days of total accumulated precipitation. You can clearly see a broad swath of the United States picking up anywhere between a ½ inch and then some locations picking up over 2.5 inches of rainfall, really stretching through parts of Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. And we most certainly got those wet snowflakes we talked about in last week's videos coming through this area, and even points back further to the west than that. Big fat snowflakes came down very quickly on the cold air behind this system. Saw some severe weather, most certainly here in parts of Colorado, just north and east of Colorado Springs, a tornado, some stronger storms in the central part of the U.S. here, and then also as the front trailed to the south. But where did it not rain? We were missing out here in the southeast. No major rainfall there. And also where we have all that snowpack, we had one little quick hitting shot at some precip that came through here. And it was relatively uneventful out here on the western side of the United States. A very nice weekend out there for the West Coast. Now, I give you some detail on this because we're about to see precipitation come in to the places where it missed, and we're going to be adding more to where it was just recently very wet. So here it is. This takes you all the way out to next Monday. This is the latest operational European model output. And we see a few things here. We certainly see quite a bit of precipitation. It looks to be disorganized. I'm going to tell you why in just a few minutes. We're going to be seeing quite a lot of rainfall here across the south into a couple places that are dry right now. And we're going to be watching a system in the beginning of this week skirt right up along the East Coast. But the telltale sign that this pattern is active is right here. If you look from the northern half of California to the west coast of Oregon and Washington, all the way up to British Columbia here, we see very, very wet conditions. And what that tells me to do is start looking at the Pacific jet stream and what it's doing, because if that sucker is moving and moving fast, we're going to have to watch for a lot of shortwave troughs move across the country. And here it is. Remember, when I say the word zonal flow, I'm talking about a jet stream that has primarily a west to east component, versus when we have a very wavy pattern that does something like that. I'll let you be the judge of what the jet stream's doing right now. And what do you see? Those fastest winds are really quite zonal throughout the next 7 to 10 days. And the stronger that Pacific jet stream is, well, there's good and there's bad. The good, we have eliminated the massive ridge over Alaska. That breaks down the cold air anchor that typically sits over parts of the Hudson Bay, kind of to the Great Lakes states. But this pattern just funnels systems across the United States, and we're going to ignite a bunch of these little shortwave troughs that have the right makeup to produce what we call upper level divergence, which kicks off round after round of precipitation. Let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. We've had this for so long throughout the month of March, even going back into February. That ridge has dominated things, and that's allowed for some highly amplified flow like this, which means the cold air that sits here can just routinely come down into this part of the country. And we've seen that. That is what the second half of February and all of March delivered. Are you ready for some change? Talked about it last week. I'm just going to let this one play out so you can see it. You keep an eye on that Alaskan trough. Ready? I'm sorry, that Alaskan ridge. It's gone. And when it leaves, the Pacific jet takes over. Look at this. Where's that big trough that was sitting over the Hudson Bay? It's gone. And what did you see in this pattern? You saw repeated shortwave troughs that snuck across the middle part of the country. Now, each one of those no longer is anchored to a deep trough over the Hudson Bay, which means when they come through, it's a brief shot of slightly cooler than average air. It's not going to be the bitterly cold, outbreaks like we just had. I mean, going into Monday morning, we had freezing temperatures that got south of the Mason-Dixon line. So we're not seeing that in the coming pattern. So let's take a look at our short-range, high-resolution model. We're going to be watching several things here. You keep an eye on California as I animate this forward. Got a quick-hitting system that moves through parts of South Dakota today, and also one that moves across the Great Lakes. But we're going to be watching this trough that kind of sneaks here across the south and blows up into a large system here before our next major one comes over the mountains. This pattern is active. Here we go. Let's take a look at it. As we click play, we're stepping hour by hour through midday on Monday. So again, you can see the snow with some rain out ahead of it moving through parts of South Dakota. This isn't a lot of snow. We're not picking up, feet, but we're going to get some snow through here on that colder air. You can see the lighter snow moving through Wisconsin toward Michigan. Our big system, though, is sitting down here, and it's kind of following this frontal boundary that sits all the way down to the Gulf Coast. So as we progress forward, Louisiana, Arkansas, you're going to be getting precipitation day, possibly some stronger thunderstorms. Look back, though, as I get you through evening hour on Monday through what's going on in Iowa and parts of Nebraska, stretching all the way actually back into Wisconsin. We have this little system moving through. There's a frontal boundary sitting right in through here on which this rain snow is going to hit. Now, I know you're seeing the darker blues here. This isn't going to be a major snowfall event, but definitely getting some snow. Through the evening hours on Monday, some strong storms in parts of Alabama, Florida, and South Carolina. And then as that system gets off the East Coast, it races through the Carolinas and up the East Coast as a pretty powerful nor'easter. All right, but it looks as though right now it's going to stay far enough offshore that it's just going to be bringing some coastal rain there along the I-95 corridor. Okay, let me take you back to show you what happens Tuesday midday coming across the mountains. Now, if you were watching California, look, this system comes right across there, lashing the California coast, lashing parts of Oregon up to Washington, and then across Nevada, Utah, and then this system emerges right here in Colorado and Wyoming. Higher elevation snow, lower elevation rain. Got to be on the lookout for some thunderstorms. Early Wednesday morning, this one emerges in the Central Plains. You can see it right there. And by Wednesday afternoon, evening, we're going to be watching for some widespread rain across parts of Nebraska, Iowa. I certainly don't want to see that. This place is still recovering from that horrific flooding event we saw. Might be cold enough on the backside that western Nebraska and southwestern South Dakota could be getting some snow out of this one too. But what you see here right along this area is that we're going to be watching on Wednesday for some strong to severe storms to the south of this system. So Storm Prediction Center has just to the east of the panhandles there of Oklahoma and Texas stronger storms, but we'll have to watch this entire region for potentially having some stronger storms. Now, to keep this going, let's take it on out with the European model. So now I'm just going to get you to Wednesday morning because we've already diagnosed what's happening at the beginning here. Here comes the system emerging. Certainly some higher pressure out ahead of this, so some nicer weather for some folks out ahead of this. But system number 2 emerges here as the nor'easter goes up the east coast. And then what do we see by Thursday? Widespread scattered showers and thunderstorms for the south. We'll be bringing rain showers here through parts of Missouri, southern Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, right in through this area. Some lighter snow and some rain here in parts of North Dakota. Now, as I play this forward, that just gets you through Thursday. That system moves off to the east. There it goes. Such that by the weekend, beginning of the weekend, I should say, much of the middle part of the country is going to be seeing relatively nicer conditions. But look what comes in behind this. Again, our focus is on California, Oregon, Washington. Here comes the next big system that comes on. And sure enough, as it gets in the middle part of the country, it also invigorates around a little weak trough, another low pressure system. So this brings in more Corn Belt weather, adverse weather with more rainfall moving forward. Our longer range forecast now for the last month and a half has been saying this is what we have to look out for this year. But there is some silver lining and some good news to all this. I'll get to that in just a few seconds here. But I'll tell you this. We see even going out to week 2, the middle part of the country here stays kind of wetter than average. And so we're going to be seeing lots of these little shortwave troughs moving through the country, each one giving us the chance at tapping into some Gulf moisture, strong thunderstorms, some severe, and more rainfall. But it's not coming, it's coming in waves. So you'll have 3 days of rain, 3 days of nice weather, then a day and a half of rain. You know, it's going to just go on and on like that. We will, as we get toward the middle of this month, start to find planting windows, I promise. But check out these temperatures. Now, this is brand new data. I've been vetting this. I've been watching this very carefully for the last while here, and I'm loving this new model output. It's a blend. Now, find your location. I'm about to take you through the next 10 days. I'm not going to show you anomalies. I want you to see the actual forecast temperatures. Look at your location, and here we go. Monday's highs, Tuesday's highs, Wednesday's high temperatures. Now, watch after Wednesday. Ready? Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday of next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and when you look at these maps, you have seen the removal of the cold air anchor that sits over the Hudson Bay. It's not a player, and this is going to feel much more seasonable in terms of temperatures and even at times warm. And I, for one, absolutely cannot wait for this. So I just showed you out the next 10 days, and we clearly see a pattern where we're not seeing major sustained big cold air shots that come through and keep us cool for 2 to 3 days. So good riddance this past weekend with the colder, wetter weather. Wetter's still on the table, but the colder is not. Okay, to finish this up, I want to take you on a quick tour of the globe. We're going to start off first here with South America. We've seen pretty convincing evidence that parts of Brazil here are going to continue to keep their slight wet bias. This is very seasonable in terms of the rainfall with the monsoon here. Now, this is going to help safrinha corn, safrinha cotton in this area. It is dry down here in Argentina, but they're moving through their harvest time period right now, so this is not going to be seen as adverse weather at all for parts of Argentina. The most aggressive harvesting, though, happening in the northern part of Argentina, where there is going to be this kind of stalled out boundary into here that might be producing quite a bit of heavy rain in the near term. So that's what's going on in South America. Step over to Europe. Things are changing right now in Europe. We're going to be seeing throughout much of this week a deeper trough that kind of sits here over parts of Western Europe, and it's going to keep the pattern cool and quite active. So you see over here over the next 7 days that it's going to be much of Western Europe that hangs on to its wetter pattern, including some big snows there in the Alps. But because of this ridge that's sitting over much of Russia north of the Black Sea, we're going to see a lot of the Russian wheat belt go through a pretty drier time period. But just to let you know, this little shortwave trough that sneaks in through here does keep weather wet here just north, like I said, of the Black Sea area. So that's kind of a quick look at Europe. Take you to Australia to finish this up. This this was the rain we got over the last week. Remember, we had what was left over of Trevor kind of interacting. Now remember, our fronts are drawn from the south here, so interacting with a cold front that kind of snuck into this area, bringing in some heavier rainfall. Now this is this is early fall for them, so we're talking about the crops that are grown there in Queensland and New South Wales. Well, the pattern has gone back to more typical of fall moving forward, and the next week looks quite dry for much of Australia. So I want to give you that quick tour as I wrap up this quick global tour, as I wrap up this video. But with that, we'll go ahead and stop it right here. We at Nutrien Ag Solutions hope you look forward to our next ag forecast coming out soon. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.